Some names just echo through time. They don't just exist. They shine bright, century after century, like guiding stars for all of us. Think about it. A legendary painter who gave us the most mysterious smile in art history. A genius inventor sketching out helicopters 500 years before anyone actually flew one. A scientist who, get this, performed dozens of autopsies when it was totally forbidden. This was a guy who once called himself Homo sans alitier, basically, an uneducated man. Yet, he left behind such an incredible body of work and ideas that even today, with all our scientific advances, we're still blown away by his vision. So, who was this guy? And what made him such an all-around genius? Let's dive in and explore the amazing story of the man who dared to live a life most people wouldn't even dream of. Welcome to my channel, the place where we dig into inspiring stories and life lessons from some of history's greatest minds. I'm Brian. Today, we're jumping into the world of Leonardo da Vinci, a name that's not just about genius, but also a symbol of just how limitless human potential can be. When you hear Leonardo, you probably instantly picture the Mona Lisa, right? That enigmatic smile has fascinated people and sparked debates for over 500 years. It seems like a simple portrait of a woman, but it's packed with mind-blowing skill. From that soft, smoky sfumato, effect that gives it an almost unreal depth, to tiny details like the hint of veins behind her eyes, or how light plays on her skin. Then there's The Last Supper. Leonardo wasn't just telling a religious story. He was giving us a deep psychological dive into how people react in a crisis. Each disciple has such a distinct personality and emotion, from outrage to doubt, from heartbreak to pure shock. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. Even though he only left behind about 15 to 25 authenticated paintings, which isn't a lot compared to other artists of his time, every single one is a masterpiece. Each was a game-changer in art history, born from hundreds, maybe even thousands of hours of research, sketching, and deep thought. But hey, just calling Leonardo a great painter? That's a massive understatement. He was also a scientist, an engineer, an inventor with, get this, over 13,000 pages of notes and drawings that still exist today. That's a huge treasure trove of knowledge covering pretty much every subject you could think of back then. Just imagine, at a time when people didn't even really get gravity, Leonardo was already sketching detailed flying machines. We're talking gliders based on bat wings, and even early ideas for helicopters and parachutes. He spent ages studying how water flows, drawing these complex swirls that it took until the 20th century, with high-speed cameras, for us to actually see and confirm how incredibly accurate his observations were. And he didn't stop there. In an era when medicine was full of superstition and guesswork, Leonardo bravely went against what society and the church allowed and did around 30 human autopsies, plus tons of animal dissections. His anatomical drawings? Not only were they super accurate scientifically, but they were also so beautiful you could frame them and hang them in an art gallery. He wanted to understand the human body like a perfect machine, how the heart pumps blood, how muscles flex, the structure of bones, and even facial expressions. He designed armored tanks, automatic crossbows, and even early kinds of robots that could make simple movements. A mind like that is incredibly rare, you know? So, what was the secret sauce that made Leonardo da Vinci so great? What allowed one person to master so many different fields and leave a legacy that's still going strong? And more importantly, what can we living in this fast-paced, opportunity-filled 21st century learn from his amazing life and career to light up our own paths? Let's get into it. If there's one thing that truly defined Leonardo da Vinci, it was his unstoppable curiosity, that burning desire to explore and understand everything around him. He was never cool with surface-level answers, never just accepted, that's just how it is. For Leonardo, the world wasn't just a place to live. It was a giant lab, a living, breathing encyclopedia wide open, daring him to dive into its mysteries. He was a big believer in sapere videre, which means knowing how to see, or the art of observation. He saw this as the ultimate key to figuring out how things really work. Learn to see, Leonardo jotted down, realized that everything connects to everything else. And when he observed, he really observed. It was never just a quick glance. He wouldn't just see a bird fly by. He'd study it, break down every wing movement, how air pressure worked on them, the mechanics that let this tiny creature switch directions in a flash. In his notes, Leonardo said, "The bird is an instrument working according to mathematical law, and man has it in his power to reproduce it." He'd spend hours just watching water flow, drawing every little detail of complex whirlpools, ripples, how water moved around stuff, trying to nail down the laws of hydrodynamics, stuff modern science only officially defined like 400 years later. He was always asking questions his time just didn't have answers for. Why is the sky blue? Why can our eyes see, but not see themselves? How come a woodpecker's tongue doesn't get messed up pecking hard wood? How does sound travel? Why does the moon reflect light, and why do we only ever see one side of it? These weren't just random thoughts. These were the big questions that pushed him toward his wide-ranging and game-changing discoveries. Take plants, for instance. Leonardo wasn't just interested in how they looked for his paintings. He wanted to know what was going on inside. How roots suck up water and nutrients, how sap moves through the stem, photosynthesis. Even though they didn't call it that back then, how leaves turn to catch the most sun. In one incredible find, Leonardo figured out a rule of nature. The total cross-sectional area of all a tree's branches at a certain height equals the cross-sectional area of the trunk. It took until the 20th century for modern science to officially prove this and give it a name like the pipe model theory or Leonardo's rule. That's what knowing how to see can do, not just looking, but looking with total focus and never-ending curiosity. Leonardo's curiosity didn't care about subjects or boundaries. It stretched from human anatomy to animal behavior, from botany to geology, optics to acoustics, hydrodynamics to astronomy, and even deep philosophical and ethical questions. He once wrote something really moving: "The noblest pleasure is the joy of understanding." It was this pure joy of discovery, of learning just a little bit more about this huge universe, that kept him learning, kept him asking why and how, even when he was an old man. Think about it. Back then, knowledge was often just handed down, no questions asked. Aristotle and the church were the ultimate authorities, and most people just accepted what they were told. So, Leonardo's attitude of constantly questioning and figuring things out for himself, that was a total mental revolution. He wasn't afraid to go against the grain, wasn't scared of being called weird or even a heretic. He was a pioneer of the experimental method. He wrote, "Experience never errs. It is only your judgments that err by promising themselves effects such as are not caused by your experiments." One that laid the groundwork for modern science. So, the first and maybe biggest motivational takeaway from Leonardo da Vinci is this: wake up and feed that curious kid inside you. Don't ever let that spark of curiosity die because of life's pressures, old ways of thinking, or the fear of looking silly. Ask questions, always ask questions, even about the stuff that seems totally obvious. Look really closely at the most ordinary things around you. You'll be amazed at the extraordinary stuff hidden inside. As Leonardo showed us, the best answers often come from the simplest questions. Train yourself to observe, not just with your eyes, but with all your senses, your mind, and your heart. Because, just like Leonardo proved, curiosity is the lighthouse that guides us to knowledge, creativity, and life-changing discoveries. Being a genius isn't always a walk in the park. Actually, Leonardo's journey was often tough, full of obstacles and setbacks. His life is a powerful and honestly pretty moving example of that. Behind that shiny, all-around genius reputation was a real guy with tons of unfinished ideas, abandoned projects, failures, and quiet heartaches. This is the man who wrote in his journal, "I have offended God and mankind because my work did not reach the quality it should have, and tell me if anything ever was done. Tell me if anything was ever made." Maybe the best example of Leonardo's persistence and his setbacks is the massive Sforza horse statue project. Back in 1482, Leonardo headed to Milan, and Duke Ludovico Sforza hired him. His dream? To create a sculpture that would blow everything ancient Rome did out of the water. A giant bronze horse, over 23 feet tall, the biggest in the world at the time. This wasn't just art. It was a massive engineering challenge nobody had ever tackled. Imagine trying to cast a nearly 70-ton chunk of bronze all in one go. Even today, that's a big deal. Leonardo poured almost 17 years into researching and prepping for this. He dissected actual horses to understand their muscles, bones, and how they moved. He studied how to melt and cast metal. He designed brand new furnace systems and molds. Finally, a huge clay model was done, a masterpiece that got rave reviews, even making his rivals jealous. But then, disaster struck. War broke out, the French invaded Milan, and all the bronze saved for the statue was melted down for cannons. Even worse, French soldiers eventually wrecked the clay model, using it for target practice. A life's passion, a huge artistic dream gone, just like that. Another example of an unfinished masterpiece is his painting Adoration of the Magi. He got the commission in 1481 for a monastery near Florence. It was a super bold and innovative piece in terms of its layout, lighting, and emotion. Leonardo cranked out hundreds of sketches, studied every character, and planned the proportions and composition like crazy. But then, after getting the basic painting down and with everyone excited to see it finished, he bailed on Florence and moved to Milan, leaving the painting incomplete. A lot of people think it was his perfectionism, that Leonardo always felt like he wasn't quite skilled enough or didn't know enough to finish it the way he truly wanted. This idea really comes through when he said, "Art is never finished, only abandoned." Even his masterpiece, The Last Supper, had its share of bad luck. Instead of the usual fresco technique, painting fast on wet plaster, Leonardo tried a new method, mixing tempera and oil, so he could work slower and get deeper effects. He spent about 3 years on it, not painting nonstop, but some days he'd just show up, stare at it for hours, and then leave or maybe just tweak a tiny detail. A friar named Bondello, who watched him work, said, "Sometimes he would arrive at dawn and climb the scaffolding. There, forgetting to eat or drink, he would paint continuously until darkness forced him to stop. At other times, he would not touch it for 3 or 4 days, but spend hours standing before it, contemplating and criticizing his own work." But tragically, that experimental technique was its downfall. The painting started falling apart just a few years after he finished it, while Leonardo was still alive. That shows you the intense thought and constant struggle of a mind reaching for perfection. So what's the lesson here? Is it about failure? Not at all. What's so admirable, and the deepest lesson from Leonardo, is that he never let these failures or unfinished projects break his spirit. He never gave up his passion for creating and his hunger for discovery, even when facing the biggest challenges. He kept working, kept exploring, kept creating right up to the end of his life. He once said, "Art is never finished, only abandoned." That line holds both regret and a deep philosophy about the endless creative journey, about accepting that we can't reach absolute perfection, but that's no reason to stop trying. The second big takeaway from Leonardo: stick with your goals and passions, even when you're up against failures and obstacles that seem impossible. Don't let the fear of failing stop you from trying out new ideas or taking paths no one else has. See every obstacle as a chance to learn and grow, every failure as a valuable lesson on your journey to becoming better. And at the same time, learn to be okay with imperfection in yourself and your work. Sometimes the real value isn't in the final product, but in the effort itself, in what you learned along the way, the people you met, and how you changed. And one more thing, knowing when to pivot, when to start something new, that's also a part of wisdom and growth. As Leonardo showed throughout his life, sticking with it doesn't mean blindly following one path. It means always moving forward, always creating, always learning, no matter how many bumps are in the road. Our journey exploring Leonardo da Vinci's life and lessons is far from over. There's still so much amazing stuff ahead. If what you've heard so far has got you feeling inspired, if you're feeling that little spark ignite and you want to learn more about this genius, how he tackled adversity and achieved greatness, go ahead and smash that like button to send some positive energy our way. And definitely subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on more inspiring stories we've got coming up. You know, I wonder how many of you watching right now are also wrestling with that feeling of not being quite good enough, not perfect, just like Leonardo sometimes did. Did you know that even this incredible genius sometimes called himself a failure because he didn't get to do everything he wanted? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments below. Every comment, every like, every share really helps us keep bringing you quality, inspiring content. So, stick around, because we're about to uncover a side of Leonardo not many people know. Something that gave him incredible mental strength to beat the odds and build a legacy that's truly timeless. Here's a really important and inspiring fact about Leonardo da Vinci that not everyone knows. He was born an illegitimate child. Born on April 15, 1452, in a tiny village in Vinci, Tuscany, his dad, Ser Piero da Vinci, was a wealthy notary from a good family. But his mom, Caterina, was just an ordinary peasant girl. Now, in the super strict, class-based society of 15th century Italy, this wasn't just a social embarrassment. It was a massive roadblock. It meant Leonardo was cut off from a lot of standard education and career paths. As a kid, Leonardo lived with his mom. But after she remarried, he went to live with his dad's family in Vinci. There, even though he was looked after, he was still the unofficial kid. He couldn't formally use the da Vinci family name, and he wasn't in line to inherit his father's money or status. Even worse, because of all this, Leonardo wasn't allowed into the top universities. He wasn't taught Latin and Greek, which were the languages of scholars, writers, and the upper class back then. Not knowing Latin meant he couldn't easily access the main scientific and philosophical knowledge of his time. Leonardo kind of sarcastically called himself homo senza lettere, a man without letters, or an unlettered man. He wrote in his notebook, "I am fully aware that because I am not a literary man, certain presumptuous persons will think that they may reasonably blame me, alleging that I am a man without letters. Foolish folk! They do not know that my subjects are to be derived from experience rather than from the words of others." He also said, "Those who make themselves beautiful with the efforts of others do not want me to do the same. They do not know that I learn from experience, not from the words of others." A lot of people would have seen these roadblocks as game enders, the death of any big dreams. But for Leonardo, what looked like a disadvantage actually set him free. It was a chance to carve out his own path without being stuck in the rigid, traditional ways of thinking. Since he didn't have that formal, by-the-book education, Leonardo learned from life itself, from nature, and from the workshop of his master, Verrocchio, where he started as a regular apprentice at 14. He learned by watching, doing, trying things out, and messing up. He devoured any book he could get his hands on, even if they were in everyday Italian. He taught himself math, geometry, anatomy, mechanics, astronomy. Maybe because he didn't have that formal schooling, Leonardo wasn't boxed in by old theories or what everyone else just accepted. He looked at the world with fresh eyes, questioned things others took for granted, and that's how he made his breakthrough discoveries. The fact that he was left-handed and wrote in that unique mirror script, right to left, also kind of shows his independent spirit and his tendency to think differently. There are lots of theories why he wrote backwards, to avoid smudging ink, to keep his notes secret, or maybe it was just easier for a lefty. But it shows someone who wasn't tied down by normal rules, always ready to find his own way, even if no one had gone that way before. Throughout his life, Leonardo constantly ran into prejudice and obstacles. In 1476, when he was just 24, he and 3 other young men were accused of sodomy with a male prostitute. That was a super serious charge back then, one that could even mean the death penalty. Even though the case was eventually dropped because there wasn't enough evidence, and maybe thanks to some help from the powerful Medici family, it definitely left some emotional scars. It might be one reason why Leonardo kept his private life so private in his writings. But through it all, Leonardo proved that greatness isn't about your degrees or your family name. It's about your hunger to learn, your drive to teach yourself, and your ability to turn disadvantages into fuel. He showed the whole world that an unlettered man, an illegitimate kid, a lefty in an age where that was seen as a bad sign, could still become one of the most brilliant and creative thinkers in all of human history. So, the third big lesson from Leonardo is this: your background doesn't define who you are or who you can become. It's how you react to your circumstances that shapes your future. Don't let things like where you came from, your education level, money problems, or any other challenge stop you from chasing your dreams and unlocking your hidden talents. The power of self-learning, persistence, and the will to rise above can smash through any limit and overcome any barrier. Be like Leonardo. Turn those roadblocks into stepping stones to success. Turn your so-called weaknesses into your unique strengths. Because in every challenge, there's an opportunity, and in every difference, there's a hidden advantage no one else has. And most importantly, trust in what you learn from real-life experience, because as Leonardo said, wisdom is the daughter of experience. In our world today, we often think of art and science as total opposites, right? One is all about feelings, gut instincts, and creativity without limits. The other is logic, analysis, and strict rules. But in Leonardo da Vinci's mind, they weren't separate or fighting each other. They were like two sides of the same coin, two different languages trying to describe the beauty and deep truths of the world. It was his incredible knack for blending these two, even making them one, that made him so unique and unbelievably great. Painting is science, and true art is where the laws of nature shine through, Leonardo declared, basically tearing down any artificial walls between them. For him, a great painter didn't just need drawing skills and a good eye. They also had to deeply understand anatomy to make the human body look real and alive. They needed to get optics to understand light and shadow, and psychology to capture expressions and gestures, creating characters that felt real. It was because of his super detailed anatomical studies, remember. He dissected over 30 bodies and filled hundreds of pages with notes on muscles, bones, and blood vessels, that Leonardo created such expressive and lifelike figures in The Last Supper. In that masterpiece, every disciple reacts differently to what Jesus says. Judas is turning away, half his face in shadow. Young John looks like he's about to faint from grief. Peter is angry, gripping a knife. It's an amazing psychological study of how people react in a crisis. For the Mona Lisa, Leonardo spent years studying how facial muscles create expressions, the structure of the eye and how light bounces off the pupil, and even how tiny blood vessels sit just under the skin. He came up with the sfumato technique, that Italian word meaning vanished like smoke, to create those soft, blurry transitions between light and dark, without harsh outlines, much like how our eyes actually see the world. That wasn't just an artistic trick. It was a scientific insight into how human vision works. And it worked the other way too. His artistic thinking, with its feel for shapes, proportions, and beauty, helped Leonardo imagine and sketch out machines and buildings in a way that was both practical and beautiful. His technical drawings, from helicopters to armored tanks, windmills to hydraulic systems, aren't just mechanically spot on. They're so well drawn they could hang in an art gallery. He totally nailed perspective, using math to create paintings that felt deep, spacious, and three-dimensional. The Vitruvian Man is the perfect example of art and science coming together, beauty and knowledge hand in hand. In this iconic drawing, Leonardo mixed what he knew about human proportions from the Roman architect Vitruvius with his own anatomical observations. The result? A symbol of the harmony between humans, geometry, and the universe. It's not just an anatomy drawing. It's a geometric study, a philosophical statement, and a work of art, all rolled into one. Leonardo believed that everything in nature was connected by underlying laws and repeating patterns. He was always looking for the principles hidden beneath all the variety in the world, the mathematical formulas of beauty. He wrote in his notebooks about how the flow of water was similar to how human hair grows, or how the structure of tree branches mirrored the blood vessels in our bodies. In every swirl of water, he saw a universal pattern. In every leaf, he saw nature's perfect geometry. Beauty is the ultimate mystery of nature, which only through observation and numbers can we decode, he wrote. He also once said something like, "People often throw around the word genius, but really you can see everything through observation. If I've achieved anything, it's because I've built on the work of those who came before me." Today, we tend to specialize like crazy. Schools often keep subjects in their own separate boxes, and society often pushes you to pick. Are you an artsy type or a science type? That's why Leonardo's lesson about thinking across different fields is more valuable than ever. connecting ideas from seemingly unrelated areas, looking at problems from different angles. That's the real key to game-changing creativity and innovation. So, the fourth big takeaway from Leonardo da Vinci is this: tear down those walls between different areas of knowledge, between careers, between your hobbies. Don't box yourself into what school or society expects. Get curious and learn about all sorts of things. Don't be afraid to be a passionate amateur in a bunch of different fields. Just like Leonardo, look for the connections, the blend between logic and intuition, analysis and creativity, looking at specifics and thinking about the big picture. Use art to make your science richer, and use science to take your art to the next level. Because, as history shows, the biggest breakthroughs and most creative solutions usually pop up where different streams of knowledge meet, in that in-between space where Leonardo lived and created his whole life. It's been over 500 years since Leonardo da Vinci passed away, on May 2nd, 1519, but his legacy hasn't faded one bit. If anything, it shines brighter, feeling more alive and relevant in our modern world than ever. He wasn't just a man of the Renaissance. He belongs to all time, to all of us. His ideas, inventions, and his vision were hundreds of years ahead of the science and tech of his day. He was sketching out concepts so far ahead of their time that it took centuries for humanity to actually make them happen. Just look at his drawings of flying machines, those ornithopters, wing-flapping contraptions, inspired by birds and bats, or his early helicopter designs with an aerial screw meant to lift someone into the air. And then there's the parachute he designed so a man can jump from any height without danger. Even though these machines never actually got off the ground in his lifetime, they were packed with early ideas about aerodynamics and mechanics that later pioneers like the Wright brothers, Igor Sikorsky, and others in aviation built upon and perfected. His design for an armored tank, sketched around 1487, could move in any direction and had 36 guns arranged in a circle to fire everywhere. An incredible forerunner to modern combat vehicles. His super-detailed anatomical studies, which included the first descriptions of things like hardening of the arteries and cirrhosis of the liver, laid a rock-solid foundation for modern medicine. He even sketched out early ideas for robots, including a mechanical knight that could sit up, wave its arms, and move its head. Talk about predicting 21st century robotics and AI. Even in art, Leonardo was way ahead of the curve. His sfumato technique, that soft, smoky effect, basically paved the way for Impressionism, which came hundreds of years later. The way he used light and shadow to create a sense of three-dimensionality influenced generations of artists, from Rembrandt all the way to modern filmmakers. But Leonardo's most important legacy isn't just about specific inventions or art techniques. It's about how he thought. He developed this unique approach. Mixing hands-on observation, he called it sperienza, logical reasoning, and incredibly detailed note-taking. He once wrote, "Experience never errs. Only your judgments err by expecting from her what is not in her power." He was one of the first to really hammer home the importance of testing ideas against reality, a cornerstone of how science works today. He was also a pioneer in thinking about systems, seeing how everything connects to the bigger picture, a way of thinking that's more crucial than ever in our complex world. When he studied water, he wasn't just interested in how it flowed. He looked at its impact on the land, the climate, and people's lives. When he designed an ideal city, he thought about everything: sanitation, clean water, traffic flow, light, and even air circulation. Today, as we face massive global challenges, from climate change to pandemics, social inequality to AI, that kind of big-picture thinking, the ability to connect different fields, and that relentless curiosity Leonardo had are exactly what we need. He reminds us that to solve big problems, we need big thinkers, people who aren't afraid to dream big, ask tough questions, and step outside the usual boundaries. Leonardo was also deeply concerned about the environment. He was a true nature lover. "We can be called the murderers of the earth," he wrote. "We should be ashamed of our sins and our madness." He was observing and worrying about people destroying forests and polluting water 500 years ago. That's a warning that, even now, we're still dealing with the serious fallout from ignoring for too long. Maybe the ultimate and most profound lesson from Leonardo is that he always looked to the future. He was always focused on what could be, not just what was. "Once you have tasted flight," he wrote, You will forever walk the earth with your eyes turned skyward. For there you have been, and there you will always too long to return. He freed his mind, and in doing so showed us the vast horizons available to us all. Alright, so we've been on quite a journey together, digging into the incredible life and priceless lessons from one of history's greatest, most creative, and most versatile minds, Leonardo da Vinci. From that boundless curiosity that pushed him to understand every nook and cranny of the universe, to the amazing persistence that helped him push through failures and his own tendencies to delay, from the incredible willpower that helped him beat the odds and break free from the limits of his background, all the way to his brilliant ability to blend art and science to make huge breakthroughs. We've seen the real Leonardo, not some untouchable myth. A human being with struggles, fears, big dreams, and yes, even failures. A guy who was once accused in court, who left many projects unfinished, who even doubted himself and his talents at times. But it was from these very imperfections and challenges that Leonardo grew and truly shone, becoming the ultimate symbol of the Renaissance spirit. A time of innovation, discovery, and thinking without limits. He lived by a motto he himself wrote: "Learning how to die peacefully depends on learning how to live well." Leonardo left us with this thought: a day well spent brings happy sleep. A life well spent brings peaceful death. And as we wrap up, here's a final thought. Be like Da Vinci, dare to fail, dare to put things off sometimes, but never stop being curious. If Leonardo da Vinci's story has resonated with you and brought some positive vibes your way, definitely hit that subscribe button for my channel and ring that notification bell. That way, you won't miss out on our upcoming explorations and more inspiring lessons. We'd absolutely love to hear what you think. Which lesson from Leonardo hit home the most for you? Or is there another historical figure you're curious about and want us to cover? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get a conversation going. Thanks so much for hanging out with my channel for this entire video. We hope you always find endless inspiration in the world around you and from deep within yourself, just like Leonardo lived and shared his gifts. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one.